Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to our presentation, Creatively Building Cities with Arts and Entertainment. My name is Crystal Young-Otterstrom and I'm Executive Director of Utah Cultural Alliance. And joining me today is our attorney, Craig Hall Sr., who many of you know, who will present some sample ordinances that we have collaborated together on to help build creative communities in all of our Utah cities and towns. So first, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the value that this industry brings to the state. And this comes from our State of UT Culture Report, which is pulls data from the number of sources listed here on the slide, and we have a number of co-publishers on this annual report, including the Utah League of Cities and Towns and Utah Associations of Counties, among a few others as well. So we hope you find this information useful to you. And of course, thank you to our sponsors who make this report possible. So first, what we'll do in this presentation is give you some definitions of the industry, talk a little bit about the economic impact of the industry on our Utah cities and towns, talk about COVID-19. As you can imagine, this industry has been pretty hard hit. We'll give a little more detail into the benefits that into the value that municipalities receive from the cultural industry, and then Craig and I will present our ordinances that we have been working on together for you. And again, my collaborator on this presentation is Craig Hall Sr. with Bennett Tueller Johnson and Deere LLC. So a little bit about Utah Cultural Alliance. We are the industry association for arts, culture, humanities, museums, and film. We like to see that we are the protectors of everything fun to do that makes Utah a wonderful place to live, work, play, and recreate, minus the mountains, although a lot of what we do happens in the mountains. We represent about 400 different cultural businesses across the state, as well as individual artists. And like many industry associations, we have both a nonprofit arm and then a political 501c4 arm where we can endorse and do more in-depth advocacy work on behalf of this industry. We hope to build a Utah that's known nationally for its amazing cultural sector. In Utah, we like to say that arts and culture is part of Utah's DNA. It's part of who we are. As you all know, Utah's pioneers built a theater before they built any other public structure, including a church, and it is part of who we are and what we do. So our cultural industry is not just nonprofits. It includes galleries, photography studios, film studios, for-profit band performances, concert venues, and more. And throughout this report, we will speak to the value that this industry brings to our communities, including long-term physical and emotional health, direct and positive boost to the economy, attracting visitors to our communities, and then of course boosting lifelong education. So back to saying that arts and culture is part of Utah's DNA, you might be shocked to learn that Utah creates the most art in the nation per capita for adults. And that's according to the National Endowment for the Arts Arts Participation Report that they do once every 5 years. And in fact, we're third for attending events and in the top 10 for visiting cultural sites. It is part of who we are. And now the numbers. So this is before COVID, of course, but 155,000 Utahns were employed by this industry. That's 4.8 billion in earnings, 15.2 billion in gross sales. So this industry is bringing back ROI to your cities and your towns through sales tax. Our nonprofit transactions are not taxable, but the for-profit transactions of this industry are taxable. And this industry contributes 4.3% to the state's economy. And you may be surprised to know that Utah is the third fastest growing state for creative industry jobs. Now, it's not just the money and the sales that our industry directly brings in, but we have a multiplier effect on the economy. And so when people go to our live events, go to galleries, to zoos, botanical experience, festivals, they spend more money than just the tickets that they purchase. They go to restaurants, they park, they might stay at a hotel. So we conducted a recent survey with Y2 Analytics in addition with partners from help paid for by Utah Department of Heritage and Arts and Salt Lake County Arts and Culture and Utah Cultural Alliance, paid for it in thirds. And you can see we asked participants in the survey how much they spend on average in addition to the tickets when they go out, and it's a pretty high number. This is the statewide aggregate, and you can see, I mean, $187 on a night out of the theater. That's pretty amazing. And so when you have these kind of opportunities in your cities and towns, you're going to have healthy and robust economies as well. Now, this industry also attracts visitors. You may be surprised to know that according to data found by the Utah Office of Tourism, that 19% of visitors actually came here to participate in something of entertainment, historic, or cultural interest. And these visitors have high increases in per visit spending. In fact, visitors motivated by historic interest represented the second highest average spend per visitor. That and again, this was found out by Utah Office of Tourism. Now, our impact is big. We're a strong part of this economy, but this is a sector of the economy that has significantly been hard hit by COVID. And of course, that impact is much less than the human impact in all of our lives that COVID has brought on all of us. I myself have lost a grandmother. Many of us have lost loved ones. But this industry is also struggling financially and is struggling to pay its bills and reopen and continue to bring the magic that this industry brings to our communities. So first I want to share this quote from Dan Hammer, who's the new head of Governor's Office of Economic Development, soon to be Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. Quality of life matters more than it ever has before. As people continue to work from home, they're going to look around for quality of life opportunities to enrich their lives. Love for arts and culture are part of who we are as Utahns. Yes, this industry strengthens our state's economic health, but the contribution to our state's quality of life cannot be surpassed. So let's talk about the impact of this pandemic. So, wow, right? Can you see these numbers? Our industry has faced $76 million in losses since March of last year. 25,000 jobs have been furloughed or terminated. And even if restrictions lifted today, ticket rollover liabilities constitute $17.5 million. And so that means previously sold tickets that have to be reset before that ticket can be sold. And for many of the businesses in our industry, that means they're essentially sold out with their prior ticket sales, and they can't even generate new revenue for months and months until they honor these ticket liabilities. But while times are bleak, thank you to the state of Utah for the phenomenal investment that they have made into our community and into our industry. Last year, through the CARES Act, they invested $29.75 million. Many of our cities and counties stepped up with similar economic impact relief programs. And really, I can't overestimate, this industry is alive because of these vital shots in the arms. And there are many shots in the arms needed right now. I'm excited to have received my vaccine, and we continue to need shots in the arm as an industry to survive. And so here's a few opportunities that you can do if you'd like to help this industry. So coming soon to your communities will be direct support from the American Relief Act. And as I'm sure you're aware, you can use these funds over 3 years for economic recovery programs that, and specifically it lists nonprofits and economic recovery as allowed uses, capital infrastructure. You can help this industry build the runway it needs to recovery, because of all the industries impacted, in many ways, this industry has the longest runway to recover because it takes so much money and so much production time to get our offerings off the ground. Now I'm going to pivot a little bit to reopening and the guidelines from the state that help keep all of us safe, because we often encounter questions, and I'm always happy to work with your city permitting offices etc., to understand what guidelines are in place. So you may or may not be aware that even though that April 10th mask mandate deadline has passed, this industry is not exempt from the mask mandate. So in that endgame bill, quote unquote, House Bill 294, gatherings over 50 are still required to have masks. And so we certainly ask for your help in communicating that message so that consumers don't think that our industry is necessarily the bad guys. Until the 3 endgame metrics are met that are defined in House Bill 294, the state guidelines of low, medium, high are in place, which means there's no cap on the number of people at events. However, it needs to be either 6 feet between household groups or shoulder to shoulder is allowed in moderate and low, as long as masks are worn and no concessions are served. And that is true for indoor and outdoor activities as well. However, once those 3 metrics are lifted, and you may or may not already be aware of this, the state guidelines actually go away. And so instead it reverts to guidelines set by local health districts, and it'll be up to each of your health districts to decide what guidelines and restrictions they're putting in place. But those guidelines are subject to a 30-day authorization from your county legislative body. And so whereas we've been operating under kind of a singular statewide system of public health practices to keep everybody safe, it's going to be a little bit different over the summer, perhaps. And again, we keep extensive resources on best practices for the industry of how to keep everybody safe. We're happy to work with your permitting staff on what the current rules are and more to help keep everybody safe. And speaking of reopening, I want you to be aware of a resource, a program that we manage, nowplayingutah.com. This is a statewide calendar of everything to see and do, 1.4 million unique users. Please put your events on this site. Please go here as a resource if you're wondering if say USANA is open, or when is the Utah Arts Festival happening. We have all of that here. We also can provide data feeds for your websites if you're looking for a calendar of events happening within your cities and towns. So again, you can reach out to us, and everything that's open or rescheduled is here. So this is a really great resource. So now I'm going to pivot a little bit to the direct impact that this industry brings to municipalities. I'm sure you all know this because you see this, and Utah really is in many ways the arts state, but robust cities with robust arts and cultural industries see improvements in public safety, to health, to perspective, to creative thinking. Here's some specific impacts. So EDC Utah actually did a study last year where they found that a vibrant arts and entertainment scene is the #1 factor that keeps cities in SLC. So if you want to attract businesses and visitors and residents to your communities, consider investing in your creative industries. We also see a significant improvement in our rural areas. And joining me in part 2 of our presentation will be some of our some city leaders from across the state who will talk about why they make investments in arts and culture and how they do that. And then towards the end of my presentation, we'll go more into our ordinances. So RAP taxes are really the #1 way that cities can help invest and grow in a robust creative community within their municipality. And my colleague Craig is going to present some of the details that go into RAP taxes and some of the process that governs these opportunities. But last year, as an aggregate, the 30, let's see, do math really quick, 39 programs across the state generate a little over $54 million. And that's a lot for our counties and cities across the state to be able to better support their communities. And cities and county governments of all sizes can partner with this industry to make their communities even better places to live. And all businesses need investment to succeed. And Utah's municipalities have an important tool available to them in these recreation, arts, and parks taxes. Now, museums are another important thing that exists in many of our cities and towns, and you can use RAPs to pay for them or other opportunities. And a few years ago, the Utah Division of Arts and Museums ran a study on the social impact of museums statewide, and respondents overwhelmingly said that visiting a museum increased their health and well-being, their intercultural competence, in continued education and strengthen relationships. And in these times where we've all been so lonely and isolated during COVID, what better place than to get back into that magic through museums and live events? Libraries, this is some statewide data from libraries. Did you know that Utah is 4th in the nation for library program attendance? And then of course, we're #1 for children's materials brought, and many of our cities have wonderful libraries at their resources. So one of our municipal ordinances that Craig Hall will talk about is our public art ordinance. And these actually have been part of Utah's community fabric since 1985. And public art really is just art that's in public places that anybody can go and see. You don't have to pay a fee. It's publicly owned by the taxpayers. And the creation of public art can be a key factor in establishing a unique and culturally vibrant place. And these civic icons really just transform our public places and artworks and really act as catalysts for community generation. And again, Craig will talk you through the details and show you our generic municipal ordinance that he has authored that you can use to create your own public art programs in your cities. And there's actually a couple of different ways to do it. Some of them are a 1% set aside, and some of them do that in different ways. And speaking of public art, going back to our nowplayingutah.com tool, we actually have a directory of over 1,000 public art pieces on Now Playing Utah. And we would love to see more cities and towns create public art collections that we can list on this map. And so people really can make the outdoors their free museum. So as I mentioned, Craig Hall, who is with Bennett, Tueller, Johnson, and Deere, he has an over 40-year career as a city attorney. He has done some significant work to revamp our percent for art generic municipal ordinance, and he's going to talk through that data. He's also working on we have an existing RAP tax generic ordinance, but he's actually working on a new version of it, and we'll talk through some of the details in his presentation. We have existing generic ordinances that help define the differences between murals and signage. And in the future, we're working on some permit ordinances as well as others. So if you have suggestions of what you need and are interested in kind of best practices for this industry, please feel free to reach out. My contact information is cyo@utculture.org, and my phone number is 801-652-0737. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Craig to talk in more detail about public art ordinances and RAP tax ordinances. Thank you so much for joining us, Craig. It's an honor to have you. And now I give you Craig Hall with Bennett, Tueller, Johnson, and Deere. Take it away, Craig.
Hey, thanks very much. Good to be with you all today. Sorry we can't be in person. I can't wait for the new normal, where we can see each other's smiles and smiling faces. I think it's unique where I can walk into a bank recently. I had a hat on, sunglasses on, a mask, and I was open carrying, and they welcomed me to the bank. I thought, what kind of normal is that? And so happy to be with you today. We're going to talk about some fun things, 2 different ideas that can help local government support the arts in the communities that you serve. I think we've all realized during this past 13, 14 months that the arts certainly provide us necessary relief from our day-to-day activities and provide a great way to enhance and benefit our lives. So I want to focus today on 2 principal ideas. First is recreation arts and park taxes, commonly known as the RAP tax. And Crystal, if you could change go to the next slide. Briefly talk about what the purpose of the RAP tax is, And it allows cities, towns, counties to enact a tax, and it is a tax specifically dedicated to fund cultural, recreational, and zoological facilities and organizations. And within the state of Utah, a number of counties and a number of cities have indeed already enacted a tax, such as that Salt Lake County, Bountiful City, Cedar City, and other cities as listed on the slide. Now, what is a wrap tax? So let's go to the next one. A wrap tax is a sales tax, which is 1/10 of a cent per every dollar spent in the community. That means that a wrap tax would provide 1 cent for every $10 that are spent. And that has to be dedicated to the purposes of, as outlined by the wrap tax. The transactions to which wrap tax applies are essentially the same as general sales tax. So if you go buy a car, 1/10 of 1% of the tax of the fair market value or the sales price of that car would be dedicated to the wrap purposes as adopted by the county or the particular city. And then the wrap tax must, and I think it's important that we focus on the word must. It can't be spent for other things. It can't be spent for infrastructure. That's a buzzword that's floating around these days, especially in Washington, D.C. What is infrastructure? But the wrap tax is specifically must be spent on cultural, recreational, and zoological facilities and organizations. In Salt Lake County, the money is generally approved by Salt Lake County Council in the mayor's office based on grant proposals by those various organizations. And I understand the wrap tax in Salt Lake County, there's several tiers depending on the size and purpose of the organization. So let's visit a little more about the process to enact a wrap tax. So if we can go to the next slide, Crystal, thank you. So here's a prohibition. For example, if you notice, if we went back to the slides, 3 or 4 earlier slides, you would see that the cities that have enacted a wrap tax are not located within Salt Lake County. And the reason for that, the state statute says, if the county has imposed a wrap tax, cities within that particular county cannot impose their own wrap tax. So as you contemplate maybe the process or the purpose or the possible enactment of a wrap tax, you need to check with the county to see if there's a wrap tax that's been already approved. If it has for that county, then you must rely on the county wrap tax and not your own. So before you impose a wrap tax, the state statutes require cities to submit an option question asking residents whether or not they are in support of the enactment of such a tax. And this requires an election. This requires like Proposition A on the general election for the county or the general election for the individual city. And if it passes, if the majority of the voters say, go for it, city council, then the city may impose the wrap tax. The wrap tax is only good for 10 years. After that, it must be reauthorized by the voters in the similar manner that it was authorized originally. So the process is not difficult. City council can make the decision to put it on the ballot. Certainly, I would suggest that the city council, you as elected officials, certainly do your homework ahead of time to make sure that you've got the public support for the various propositions that fall within the purview of the wrap tax, so that when it's on the ballot, hopefully there is a groundswell of positive vibes to passing the wrap tax for very specific proposals that would enhance your community. Cedar City obviously has a wrap tax for the support of, I assume they spend most of their money on the Shakespeare Festival. And that's a good example. And there's so many various projects within the state that are just awesome to support the arts. I think most of our communities, if they're convinced that the elected officials will spend the money wisely, would support such a RAP tax. That's the brief overview of a RAP tax. The process is not difficult, but it does require process and obviously community support. So let's move on to the next area, which is a little different. There are no state statutes that I'm aware of that prohibit a community to pass their own ordinance regarding public arts ordinances. And what the purpose is, if we can go one more slide, the purpose is to provide a method to fund public art, which is defined as art owned by or produced at the request of the city, or to foster an environment where the arts can thrive and become a part of the city's infrastructure, and to allow citizens and to enjoy public art, and also to promote and encourage the creative expression by artists. So now the question is, how do we do it? So there's a couple ways. Number one, let's assume that your city council has a budget on an annual basis of the, I'm talking generally the general fund. We probably don't want to throw in there electrical revenues generated by an electrical system, a water system, or a sewer system, or a stormwater system. They probably don't have much to do with funding of the arts. But the general fund, the money comes from property tax, fines, other assessments, sales tax that is collected within the community. The city council, you as elected officials, members of the city council can say, you know, of our $2 million, we want to annually appropriate as a regular basis 1% or half of 1% of the general fund monies to be spent toward public art program. You can do that by ordinance, and that's really the ultimate example of self-governance, where you can govern yourself and decide this is a priority for the community. The other manner by which you can fund these public art programs is have an art maintenance fund and require that it receive a certain amount of money, you know, $100,000 on an annual appropriation. And if you happen to have a RAP tax, revenues received from RAP taxes certainly may be used to fund that account. There is a downside to that, because if there's a tough time in the community, maybe that funding of 100,000 or 200,000 or whatever is deemed appropriate by you city council folks may go by the wayside for what you perceive as other more beneficial projects at the moment. So let's look and see what major and minor public art projects could be. So let's go one more forward. Really the difference is the amount of money to be spent on a project. The difference between a major and a minor project, public art program, is the amount of funding required. The line between major and minor depends on the jurisdictions. Larger cities, the line could be, for example, 30,000, and for smaller cities, the line could be 10,000. However, the cities, as I understand it, can establish those lines. And different approval procedures should govern for major and minor programs. Major major art projects, these could be submitted to and approved by the city council in conjunction with an annual budget. Or if applicable, for example, another method would be a major public arts program project could be reviewed by a planning commission and then eventually approved by the city council. Minor art projects could be approved by the mayor with notice to the city council or some method by which you as the city officials decide and established by ordinance. Let's go to one other area that we can talk about, and that would be art grants. Now, art grants may be awarded to individuals, organizations, business entities to fund specific projects within the city. Certainly, it's great to get public participation in these type of projects. And so, and when we've tried to give counsel to various organizations and cities and municipalities, we strongly suggest that an arts advisory committee is established to create and review and appropriate or approve, grant applications promoting the arts. At some point, the grants should ultimately be approved by the city council or other governing body, depending on your form of government. So there's a hiccup or a caution. Cities certainly need to be transparent and follow public hearing requirements of the Utah Code. You can see that on the screen, 10.8.2, and before appropriating the money to any arts grant or arts program. One of the things that is very important is we need to make sure that the projects are real, the projects will come to fruition. Recently, there's been some consternation about some money that was donated to some programs up in the northern part of Utah, where the donor was disappointed that the money didn't go exactly as he or she was anticipating. And so I think transparency and consistency is very important in these type of projects. The last thing I want to say is this. Our firm, Bennett, Tudor, Johnson, and Dinner, and myself in particular, I've been a municipal attorney for more than 40 years now. I've seen major arts projects in Murray with the amphitheater and with plays. Same thing was in South Jordan. You look at various other cities that have museums and gardens that have been funded in some means because it's important to the character and quality of the city. If you have any questions regarding enacting a RAP tax, or if you'd like a copy of what we've drafted as a model public arts ordinance, just contact me. We'll be happy to visit with you. Love to provide some service to you. And if you have any questions, there's my emails on the screen, and it's chall@btjd, and we love to be able to help you. And look forward to working with you hopefully in the future, and be happy to answer any questions. Enjoy your conference. Enjoy St. George. Stay warm. Thank you very much. Ciao.
Thank you, Craig. We greatly appreciate having you here today, and we invite all of our listeners to join us for part 2 for the live session of our presentation on Friday, April 23rd at 9 a.m., where we will take your questions about public art ordinances, RAP ordinances, and other ordinances to benefit the arts and entertainment industries within your cities. Thank you so much.